So, a couple days ago, one of my best friends, David Cowan, reached out and he texted me and he's like, "Hey, he's like, have you checked out Cursor at all?" And I'm like, "No, what is that?" And he's like, "Well, it's an AI code editor." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll have to check it out," but hadn't really had a chance to get around with it yet. And that was about 2 days ago. And this morning again, we were chatting about something else. And he's like, "Hey, have you played with Cursor?" And I'm like, "I have not yet." All right, and I had something that I needed to code up anyway to clean up some old code. And I got to tell you, within 10 minutes of playing with Cursor, I was absolutely sold. And I think you probably will be too. So if we look at this, we can actually download it for free. And the pricing, they give you some pretty good functionality for free. So you get the Pro 2-week trial. But then after that, it'll still keep on working. And then the Pro version is only $20 a month, which that's the same as I'm paying for my ChatGPT subscription. That's the same that I'm paying for my Claude subscription. So it's in line with everything else. And once you see what it does, it's actually kind of amazing. So a blog post that I just wrote. This is some ugly Python code that I wrote years ago, and I called it Cat Sitter, right? It's kind of a Hashcat pun. And basically what was going on is I have a solid methodology, at least I think it's solid, I'm biased, that I use for password cracking. And when I would start that up, I was using a gaming computer, like a powerful computer I had at home. And so I would start it up on a password cracking assignment that may only take, say, an hour. Problem is, when I was with the government, I was then going into the office for like 10 plus hour days. And so my computer may try something for an hour and then be done with it. Well, now maybe I wanted to try something that would take like 4.5 hours, but I wasn't there to start it up. And obviously you can manage remotely, etc., but ain't no one got time for all that. And so what I wrote was, I'm like, well, listen, I use the same methodology over and over. I use, for the most part, the same word list, rule set, everything over and over in this kind of order. And so let's automate that. So I wrote a Python script called Cat Sitter that would kind of go through and do all of that with little notes to myself, etc. Now, before I was getting ready to, and I posted this now on the Argalius Labs GitHub, getting ready to write a blog post about it that this video will go with. But before I posted it, I wanted to clean up the code, and I'm like, oh, well, I can use that in Cursor. So if you look at Cursor here, it looks very similar to, VS Code, whatever else you're using, kind of IDE to write code. I even a lot of times just use very basic Notepad++. But you can highlight a section of code. And in this case, I'm going to highlight the entire code base because I wrote it years ago. My code is ugly but functional. It can be a heck of a lot better. And so now that I've highlighted some code, in this case all the code, I can hit Control L, and if we look over here, it brings up this interactive window, this interactive chat window like you would have if you're using ChatGPT or Claude. And I can just say, make this code better. Now, we just sit there and boom, boom, boom. We don't have to give this any API keys. We don't have to give it anything. It takes care of all this for us. And now we can see that it's making improvements to the code. It's actually organizing it, putting more into functions, etc. It will, when it is done, and this is going at a fairly quick rate too, right? Fairly impressive here. Key improvements, better organization, path handling, etc., does all these things. And now we can click here, apply all, and then accept this changes. And so just like that, it has now made the changes to the code. And we can sit there once again, just modify like a certain part of it, hit Control L, and now interact with how we want to change that code and sit there and work with it. When I had it make some changes, I went to run it the first time, it didn't run. As I think a lot of us have, experienced with writing code, AI or otherwise, just like I would do with ChatGPT or Claude. I pasted the error message in here. It identified what needed to be done, made the changes, everything in line. We can also just start things from scratch. It can automatically, you can just open up a window and Control I instead of Control L and tell it what you want. Write me some code that does this. So even though that I've been using ChatGPT and Claude to help me write the code, I think I'm really probably going to switch to this because behind the scenes, that's what it's using anyway. You can read about that on its site. But the way this is all just kind of built in and makes it super, super simple, huge fan of this. So I'll play around with it more. I'll probably write some more blog posts on it, some other videos on it. But I just wanted to introduce you to Cursor because I'm very glad that he introduced me to it.